On November 5, 1983, a diving chamber on a North Sea oil rig broke open. 5 men died in a fraction of a second. 1 man survived. He was standing on the outside. Most people who know this story blame 1 man for opening a clamp too early. That version is wrong. The system was missing a safety device that already existed, was already required, and was never installed. It took 26 years to prove it. To understand what went wrong on the Byford Dolphin, you first need to understand saturation diving, because the engineering that killed these men is the same engineering that was supposed to protect them. When a diver descends past a certain depth, the gases in their breathing mixture dissolve into their blood and tissues under pressure. The deeper they go, the more gas dissolves. It follows a principle called Henry's Law. The amount of gas that dissolves in a liquid is proportional to the pressure above it. Think of a sealed bottle of soda. The carbon dioxide stays dissolved under pressure. Open the cap, release the pressure, and the gas erupts. Your blood under rapid decompression does the same thing. Coming back up too fast means those dissolved gases expand into bubbles inside the body. That is decompression sickness, the bends. It can cause joint pain so severe that divers double over. It can cause paralysis. It can kill. The solution is slow decompression. Let the gas leave the tissues at a controlled rate. But on a deep commercial dive, the decompression time can be longer than the dive itself. Days longer. For the oil companies building pipelines and maintaining wellheads in the North Sea in the 1970s and 80s, that math did not work. Every hour of decompression was an hour a diver was not working. Saturation diving solved the equation. The principle is elegant. Once your tissues are fully saturated with gas at a given pressure, they cannot absorb any more. The decompression obligation stops increasing no matter how long you stay at depth. So instead of decompressing after every dive, you stay pressurized. You live in a steel chamber on the rig, breathe pressurized gas, eat pressurized meals, sleep in pressurized bunks. When your shift begins, a diving bell locks onto the chamber through a connecting trunk, equalizes pressure, and lowers you to the seabed. When your shift ends, typically after 8 hours or so, the bell brings you back and reconnects to the chamber. You only decompress once, at the end of the entire job. That single decompression can take a week or more, but you only do it once. The trade-off is that for the entire duration of the job, your body is a container of compressed gas. And the chamber you live in is the only thing preventing that gas from expanding. Modern saturation divers earn between $30,000 and $45,000 a month. The pay reflects the risk. By one count, at least 58 divers died in the North Sea between the 1960s and early 2000s. And only about 336 saturation divers were employed in the entire United States as of 2015. This is not a large profession. It is a small group of people doing work that most human bodies were never designed for. The Byford Dolphin was a semi-submersible drilling rig, originally named Deep Sea Driller, built in 1974 at the Aker Verdal shipyard in Norway. 355 feet long, 221 feet wide, an Aker H3 design, the first of its class. It had a troubled record before the diving system ever became an issue. In 1976, it got stuck in shallow water during a relocation in the North Sea. All crew were evacuated, but 6 men died falling from rescue boats into the water. The rig survived. It was repaired, renamed, and sent back to work. The diving system installed on the Byford Dolphin was built by Comex, a French diving contractor, and it dated from 1975. This matters because by 1983 the technology had moved on, but the system had not. Here is where it gets important. The system lacked 3 things: fail-safe hatches, outboard pressure gauges, and most critically, an interlocking mechanism. An interlock is a device that physically prevents the connection between the bell and the chamber from being opened while the system is still pressurized. It makes it mechanically impossible to release the clamp before the trunk is depressurized. Without one, The only thing standing between 9 atmospheres and 1 atmosphere was a human being following procedure correctly. Every time. In the dark, in the cold, in the noise. In 1982, the certification body Norsk Veritas issued a rule. All connecting mechanisms between bells and chambers must include an interlock to prevent operation while the trunk is pressurized. But the rule applied only to new construction. The Byford Dolphin was built in 1974. It was grandfathered in. No one retrofitted the system. No one required it. The safety device that would have prevented what happened next already existed. It was already required, just not for this rig. The Frigg gas field, Norwegian sector of the North Sea, roughly 4 in the morning. The North Sea in November is not a gentle environment. Wind, rain, near freezing temperatures, the constant mechanical noise from the rig. Visibility is poor. The deck of a semi-submersible platform moves with the swell. This is where the transfer was happening. Outdoors, in the dark, on a shifting steel platform 300 miles from the Norwegian coast. The Byford Dolphin's diving system was pressurized to 9 atmospheres, the equivalent of roughly 297 feet of seawater. Inside Chamber 2, British divers Edwin Coward, age 35, and Roy Lucas, age 38, were resting between shifts. Norwegian divers Bjorn Bergensen, 29, and Truls Hellevik, 34, were returning from an 8-hour shift in the diving bell. On the rig deck, 2 dive tenders managed the transfer. William Crammond, age 32, Martin Saunders. Their job was to assist Bergensen and Hellevik as they moved from the bell through a connecting trunk and into Chamber 1. The transfer followed a fixed sequence. The divers exit the bell and enter the chamber. The chamber door is sealed. The trunk is slowly depressurized until it reaches 1 atmosphere. Only then is the clamp released to disconnect the bell. Every step depends on the one before it. The communication system between the tenders and the pressurized chamber was a megaphone attached to the wall surface. On a North Sea oil rig at 4 in the morning, with sea noise, rig noise, and wind, that system was close to useless. What happened next took a fraction of a second. Some estimates place it at less than 0.2 of a second. Crammond opened the clamp before the chamber door was sealed. Why he did this has never been determined. Miscommunication through the crude megaphone system, fatigue, a possible instruction from a supervisor. The investigation never resolved it. The clamp released, the trunk was now open to the outside, but the chamber door had not been sealed. 9 atmospheres of pressurized gas rushed out through the only gap it could find. The door tried to swing shut, but the rim caught against the frame, leaving a crescent-shaped opening roughly 24 inches wide. It could not close, and everything inside the chamber was being forced toward that opening. This is what engineers call a delta P event, a sudden, massive difference in pressure between 2 connected spaces. In diving and subsea work, delta P is one of the most feared forces in the industry. Water or gas will rush from high pressure to low pressure with a force that cannot be resisted, fought, or outrun. It will carry anything in its path. The force through that gap was estimated at tens of tons. It launched a 4-ton diving bell off its housing like a bottle cap. It struck Crammond. He died instantly. It hit Saunders, critically injuring him. Saunders survived. He was the only one. Truls Hellevik was nearest to the jammed door. The explosive pressure differential forced his body through the 24-inch crescent gap. His chest and abdominal organs were ejected. His upper spine was ejected. All 4 limbs were separated. Fragments were scattered across the rig deck. Part of his body was recovered from the derrick, 33 feet above the chambers. Edwin Coward, Roy Lucas, and Bjorn Bergensen were deeper inside the chambers, further from the opening. Their bodies remained intact, but internally, the damage was absolute. It took 5 years for the autopsy results to be published. In June 1988, a team led by pathologist J.C. Gearston published their findings in the American Journal of Forensic Medicine and Pathology. It remains one of the most extraordinary forensic documents ever produced. When the pressure dropped from 9 atmospheres to 1, every dissolved gas in the divers' bodies erupted simultaneously. This was not decompression sickness. Decompression sickness happens over minutes. This happened in less than a heartbeat. The dissolved gases came out of the blood so violently that they tore it apart at a molecular level. Fat that is normally carried through the bloodstream in a dissolved state was ripped free. It collected in the arteries, veins, and hearts of all 3 divers and concentrated heavily in their livers. The forensic team described the mixture of fat and gas bubbles as resembling sizzling butter on a frying pan. That is not a metaphor. It is a clinical observation documented in a peer-reviewed journal. Under a microscope at 110 times magnification, they found gas cavities riddling the brain tissue of all 3 divers. The air that was supposed to stay dissolved in their blood had formed bubbles inside the organ that processes every thought, every memory, every sense of self. None of them felt any of it. The event was faster than nerve conduction velocity. The men in those chambers died before a pain signal could have traveled from their skin to their spinal cord. The Norwegian government investigation concluded that the accident was caused by human error. William Cramond's error. He opened the clamp too early. Case closed. Cramond was dead. He could not defend himself. His widow, Ruth Cramond, was publicly vilified. She was forced to move from Edinburgh because of the blame directed at her family. Her husband was the face of the disaster. But the investigation never addressed the obvious question. The system that Cramond operated had no interlock, no physical barrier that would have stopped him from opening the clamp while the trunk was still pressurized. The procedure existed, but procedures rely on people. And people working 12-hour shifts in the dark, in the cold, communicating through a megaphone on a noisy rig at 4 in the morning, will eventually make a mistake. The interlock would have made that mistake impossible. Former crew members and the Norwegian Oil Workers Union alleged something worse. They claimed that COMEX had requested formal exemptions from safety equipment requirements, and that the Norwegian Petroleum Directorate had granted them. Missing interlocks, missing outboard pressure gauges, missing reliable communication systems, all held back, they alleged, through paperwork and regulatory permission. If true, the accident was not one man's mistake. It was a system engineered to fail, approved by the people responsible for preventing exactly this. The families did not accept the official conclusion. They formed the North Sea Divers Alliance and began pressing for a deeper investigation. Roy Lucas's daughter, Claire Lucas, put it bluntly. She said she would go so far as to say that the Norwegian government murdered her father because they knew the men were diving with an unsafe decompression chamber. For over 2 decades, the families carried that fight. They raised their children alone. They lived on reduced incomes. They wrote letters, filed requests, pushed for new hearings. And for 25 years, they were told the matter was closed. In 2008, a new report concluded that faulty equipment, not human error, was the primary cause of the accident. The blame on Cramond was effectively shifted. The system had failed. The system had always been the problem. In 2009, 26 years after 5 men died and 1 man's life was shattered, the Norwegian government paid compensation to the families of all victims, including the surviving tender Martin Saunders. The amount was never disclosed. The Byford Dolphin continued operating for decades after the accident. In 2002, a second fatal accident occurred on the rig when a 44-year-old Norwegian worker was struck on the head and killed. The rig lost its Statoil contact over safety concerns. 1 month after the 1983 accident, Norske Veritas and the Norwegian Oil Directorate made the interlocking mechanism rule retroactive. Every bell-to-chamber system in operation had to have one. The device that would have prevented 5 deaths became mandatory because 5 men died without it. Today, every commercial saturation diving system in the world uses interlocking mechanisms. In 2019, the Byford Dolphin was scrapped. The physical rig is gone, but the forensic paper remains. The Gerston report is still cited in diving medicine, in pressure physics, and in every serious discussion of what happens when engineering fails and physics fills the gap. The Byford Dolphin accident was not a freak event. It was a known risk managed by paperwork instead of engineering. An interlock existed, a rule existed, a rig was exempted, and when one man performed one step out of sequence on a dark, noisy rig at 4 in the morning, there was nothing between him and 9 atmospheres of physics. Here's the question that stays with me. Should the investigation have reached the same conclusion the families did in 1983, not 2008? The equipment failures were documented. The missing interlocks were known. What took 25 years? The evidence or the willingness to act on it? I want to know what you think. Was it Crammond or the people who decided he didn't need an interlock? Tell me in the comments. The Byford Dolphin proved that the most dangerous moment in saturation diving is not the dive. It is the transition, the space between pressure and atmosphere. But what happens when a scuba dive goes wrong and there's a camera rolling? In 2000, a diver strapped a camera to his head and descended into the blue hole in Dahab, Egypt. He didn't know he was filming his own death. The raw footage is in the video, on screen now. Subscribe to discover more mysteries below the blue. See you in the deep.